Hello, friends, and welcome back to our Storytime Corner. Today, I have a very special tale to share with you. A story about a long journey, shining stars, and a very curious little camel. This is the story of Epiphany, when wise men from the east followed a star to find a newborn king. So get comfortable and let's travel back in time together. Long, long ago, in a land far to the east, there lived 3 wise kings. Their names were Caspar, Melchior, and Balthazar. They were not just kings of great lands. They were also kings of the stars. Every night they would climb to the highest towers of their palaces and gaze at the heavens. They knew the stories of every star, every constellation, and every planet. They believed that the stars held secrets and could tell stories of things to come. One night, as they looked up at the deep, dark sky, they saw something new, a star brighter than any they'd ever seen before. It wasn't just bright, it was special. It seemed to pulse with a gentle, warm light, a light that spoke of joy and hope. The 3 kings knew, deep in their hearts, that this was no ordinary star. It was a sign that a new king had been born, a king who would bring peace and love to the world. Without a moment's hesitation, they decided they must go and find this baby king. They had to honor him and bring him gifts worthy of his greatness. So they prepared for a long and difficult journey. They packed their finest silks, filled their bags with food and water, and gathered their most precious treasures. King Caspar, with his long, flowing white beard, chose a gift of gold. Gold, shiny and bright, a gift for a true king, symbolizing his royal power. King Melchior, wise and thoughtful, selected frankincense. This was a special kind of sweet-smelling resin that was burned in temples to honor God. It was a gift that said this new king was not just a ruler of lands, but also divine. And King Balthazar, with his kind eyes and warm smile, brought a gift of myrrh. Myrrh was a precious perfume, but it was also used to anoint those who had passed away, a gift that foretold the king's humanity and the great sacrifice he would one day make. With their magnificent gifts ready, the kings called for their camels. Their caravans were grand, filled with strong, tall camels that could travel for days across the hot, sandy desert without needing much water. These were proud, experienced camels chosen for their strength and endurance. But amongst the tall, grand camels, there was one little camel. His name was Camel. Camel was smaller than the others, with big, curious eyes and ears that twitched at every sound. He wasn't as strong, and he certainly wasn't as experienced. The other camels often looked down on him. "You're too small for a journey like this," they would grumble. "You'll just slow us down." Camel's heart sank. More than anything, he wanted to go on this great adventure. He had heard the kings talking about the special star and the baby king. He felt a pull towards that star, a longing to see this new king for himself. He didn't want to be left behind in the dusty stables. So, as the caravan prepared to leave, Camel pushed his way to the front. He stood before King Balthazar, looked up with his big, hopeful eyes, and let out a soft, pleading bleat. King Balthazar looked down and saw the determination in the little camel's eyes. He smiled gently. "This one has a strong spirit," he said to the other kings. "Let him come." Every journey needs a little bit of extra heart, and so Camel joined the caravan. His heart leaped with joy. The journey began. They traveled by night, guided by the magnificent star that shone like a diamond in the dark sky. During the day, the sun was too hot, so they rested in the shade of their tents. The desert was a vast and challenging place. There were towering sand dunes that looked like golden mountains, and rocky paths that were difficult to navigate. The older camels strode confidently, their long legs eating up the miles, but for Camel, it was hard work. His short legs had to take 2 steps for every one of theirs. Sand got in his eyes, and the journey was long and tiring. Sometimes he would stumble and fall behind, The other camels would scoff. See? We told you he couldn't keep up. But Camel never gave up. He would scramble back to his feet, shake the sand from his coat, and fix his eyes on the beautiful star. He kept thinking about the baby king. I have to see him, he would whisper to himself. I just have to. The three kings noticed Camel's struggle, but they also noticed his incredible spirit. King Melchior would often walk beside him, offering a kind word of encouragement. Keep going, little one. The most worthy goals are often the hardest to reach. King Caspar would make sure Camel had extra water, and King Balthazar would sometimes let the little camel rest in the shadow of his own, much larger camel. Camel saw things the other camels missed. Because he was smaller and closer to the ground, he noticed the tiny desert flowers that bloomed after a rare rain shower. He saw the funny little desert mice scurrying between the rocks. His curiosity made the long journey feel a little less long. He would point them out with a twitch of his nose, and even the stern old camels would sometimes crack a smile. One night, a fierce sandstorm blew in. The wind howled and whipped the sand into a blinding frenzy. The star was completely hidden. The caravan was lost. The big camels huddled together, frightened and confused. The kings were worried. How would they find their way without their guiding star? But Camel, with his sharp ears, heard something, a faint sound on the wind. It was the gentle bleating of sheep, and he could smell something too. The smell of hay and animals carried on the breeze. He started walking towards the sound, his little legs moving with a new purpose. The kings, seeing his confidence, decided to trust him. Let the little one lead, said Balthazar. Perhaps his heart sees what our eyes cannot. The caravan followed Camel through the last of the storm. And then they saw it. The storm had passed, and there in the sky was their star. It was no longer moving. It was standing still, shining its light down upon a small, humble town, the town of Bethlehem. The star's light pointed directly to a simple stable, not a palace. The kings were surprised, but they knew the star had led them true. As they approached, Camel's heart beat faster and faster. He could hear the soft cooing of a baby. The kings dismounted and entered the stable. And there, lying in a manger filled with hay, was a tiny baby. His mother, Mary, and father, Joseph, watched over him with love-filled eyes. The stable was filled with a peace and warmth that Camel had never felt before. It was more wonderful than any palace. The three kings knelt down. They presented their precious gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They weren't just honoring a king. They were welcoming the Son of God. Camel peeked into the stable from the doorway. He was too shy to go all the way in. He didn't have a grand gift of gold or frankincense. He was just a small, tired camel. He felt a little sad that he had nothing to offer. Just then, the baby, Jesus, opened his eyes. He didn't look at the shiny gold or the fancy kings. His eyes found Camel, standing nervously in the doorway. And then the baby king smiled. A small, perfect, beautiful smile. In that moment, Camel understood. The journey itself was his gift. His determination, his hope, and his little heart that guided them through the storm, that was his offering. He had brought the king safely to this place. A wave of pure joy washed over him. He had seen the baby king, and the baby king had seen him. The journey back was different. Camel didn't feel small or slow anymore. He walked with his head held high. The other camels looked at him with new respect. He was no longer just a little camel. He was the hero of their journey. And so, every year when we celebrate Epiphany and remember the journey of the three kings, let's also remember the little camel Camel. His story teaches us that it doesn't matter how small you are, or whether you have fancy gifts to give. What truly matters is the love in your heart. the courage to keep going even when things are tough, and the faith to follow your own special star. Thank you for joining me for this story today. I hope it filled your heart with a little bit of warmth and wonder. Remember to always follow the light of hope in your own life. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone you love. Until next time, stay curious and keep shining. Bye for now.